Creating a graph with the data collected from your research question allows you to analyze the information more easily. Graphs provide a visual representation of numerical and categorical data that allows us to easily compare and contrast, look for patterns and trends, make predictions, and/or isolate unusual events. The best kind of graph to use depends on what kind of question you're asking. Appropriate graphs for variability show the distribution or the frequency of a certain characteristic across individuals in a population. Frequency plots, histograms, and box and whiskers are the best kind of graphs to show this. To compare groups, comparison of a data set can be done with 2 frequency plots, 2 histograms, or 2 box and whisker graphs, or by simply using a bar graph with a summary number for each group. For correlation questions, a scatter plot is best, with the 2 numeric variables on the x and y axis, usually the independent variable on the x and the dependent on the y, and then plotted points with a line of best fit showing a pattern. For change through time, a line graph is best, which has time on the x-axis and the variable on the y-axis. Points are plotted, and then a line is used to connect the points, showing how something changes over time. A line graph is a form of scatter plot. The difference is scatter plots use line of best fit, while a line graph actually connects the points. Here is an example of 2 ways to graph variability within a group. On the left is a bar graph with the month on the x-axis and the inches of rain on the y. And this bar graph answers the question, how much rainfall does Bangor get during the month of July? However, this bar graph is only showing the average rainfall in the month of July. On the right is a frequency plot with the total rainfall in inches on the x-axis and frequency plotted on the y-axis. Each dot in the frequency plot represents a day in July in which rain fell at that certain amount in inches. This slide shows the 3 different graphs for answering the research question, how much rainfall does Bangor get during the month of July? You can see again the frequency plot with the rainfall for the month in inches on the x-axis and then the frequency dots plotted on the y-axis. Below the frequency plot you can see a box and whisker graph of the same rainfall data for the month of July in Bangor. And on the right, you can see a histogram showing the same exact data for the month of July in Bangor. The histogram and the frequency plot are very similar types of graphs. The difference is that each dot in a frequency plot equals 1 day and 1 amount. However, each bar on the histogram represents the number of days rain fell within a certain range of inches. Frequency plots and histograms show a distribution. A box and whisker is a distribution, but it more clearly shows the maximum, minimum, and median values in the data. How would you describe the rain in Bangor in July? Pause the video and answer the research question. If your research question is a comparing groups question, you have multiple graphs to use to display your data. The research question on this slide is, during which month does Bangor receive more precipitation, July or September? So the comparison is the rainfall amount between 2 different months. On the left is a frequency plot for the month of July and the month of September showing the total rainfall, so you can compare the 2 months. In the middle is the same data, only in box and whisker form, showing the total rainfall on the x-axis. And you can see the distribution of rainfall for the 2 months, July and September, in Bangor and compare. Another way to compare using a graph is to take a summary value, such as the average rainfall, and create a bar graph with July and September as the two bars and the total rainfall in inches on the y. How does the total rainfall in Bangor compare for the month of July and September? Pause the video and answer the research question based on the three graphs. A scatter plot is a great way to demonstrate how two variables are correlated. For this slide, the research question is the mileage, measured in miles per gallon, a car gets related to its weight? On the x-axis is the weight of the car, and on the y-axis is the miles per gallon. What is the relationship between a car's miles per gallon and its weight? How would you describe the car that is a clear outlier in this graph? Would you buy it? Why or why not? Pause the video and answer the questions. A line graph is best for showing change through time. The research question here is, how has the rate of chlamydia infections in Maine changed through time? On the x-axis is always time, in this case from 1980 to 2010. On the y-axis is the cases of chlamydia in Maine per 100,000 people. How has the rate changed over time? Pause the video and answer the question using the graph. A pie chart or a stacked bar graph are good ways to show how something is divided into parts. In this case, the research question is, how much of Maine's electricity is generated by renewable fuels? On the left is a pie chart showing all of the fuels used to generate electricity in Maine and how they are proportioned. And on the right is a stacked bar graph showing the same information. How much of Maine's electricity is generated by renewable fuels? Pause the video and answer the research question using the graph. This is an example of a graph choice chart that you can use to help you decide what type of graph is best for your research question. In the left-hand column is the type of questions and their descriptions. The next column describes the format of the question so you can easily recognize it. The next column includes the type of data that is appropriate for each question. And the fourth column is the suitable type of graph. Finally, the last column on the right shows you an example of how to set up that particular type of graph for each research question. This chart can be used as you are working on your own research project to make sure that your data is displayed in an appropriate way to answer the question. This final slide shows you a flowchart version of the graph choice chart to help you decide the type of graph to use for your research question. You read this chart from left to right. Starting with the box on the left, you decide the type of question that you have, and then you answer the question in the box. If your answer is yes or no, that determines the next box that you read in the flowchart. And you continue from left to right across the chart until you decide the type of graph that is appropriate for your research question. Both of these handouts are available to you as you work on your own research project or as you practice deciding types of questions and the type of graph appropriate for each question.